Scarlet Nexus. It's a game, and one that is very difficult to describe in one word. But it's amazing, and I think you should try playing it. I never review games that I play in my own spare time, but this game is an exception, and if you're considering trying Scarlet Nexus out for yourself, it might genuinely surprise you. It's definitely one of the best games I played in a very long time, and here's my short review for it. So, what is Scarlet Nexus? Well, it's a character-driven, drama-filled action-adventure RPG game, but it's set in like a really cool and unique sci-fi universe. Quick disclaimer, I've only played through the main plot once as Yuito, but on my second playthrough as Kasane, it'll most likely be completed by the time this video is released. This review will not contain any spoilers, even though it's a story-driven game. The majority of the footage I've recorded for this video is only limited to like the first 2 hours of playing the game, or footage that doesn't even reveal any significant story stuff. Everything in this game centers around a futuristic world where humans have discovered a way to develop psionic powers and the ability to communicate with one another through their brains. However, humanity lives in fear of the others, horrific brain-eating monsters that appeared out of nowhere from a mysterious belt that surrounds Earth. This has caused the remaining humans to live in cities under the protection of the Other Suppression Force, an army of elite psionics trained to deal and neutralize others. It's almost like cyberpunk, but even more high-tech, with a little dose of dystopian weirdness thrown in there for good measure. So, as the player, you basically go through a fairly linear adventure with a large cast of characters, but before you start the game, you're given two options. You either choose between playing as Yuito Sumeragi or Kasane Randall, who have very different combat styles and personalities, but I think you should play as both of them to get the full story of Scarlet Nexus. I'll admit, the game does start off a bit slow, with tons of exposition and dialogue. The characters also get introduced way too quickly, but it improves dramatically after the first hour, so definitely give it a chance. I promise you won't be disappointed. It becomes a very intriguing story after the first few phases. While the main story is fantastic, what truly makes Scarlet Nexus special is the amount of care given to developing its large supporting cast of 8 characters that join the squad. Despite the fact that the majority of the characters are very stereotypical anime archetypes,
Are you an idiot?
the game does an excellent job of developing them throughout the story, and by the end of completing my first playthrough, I eventually grew to care about them. Personally, I'm more interested in the world building and the sci-fi elements, but story-wise, the game has some wonderful and unexpected moments throughout the story. Combat in Scarlet Nexus is a lot of fun. Both Yuito and Kasane have psychokinesis, which allows them to telekinetically grab objects and throw them towards enemies, but they both use different weapons. As I said previously, Yuito and Kasane have combat differences. Yuito uses a close-range sword for faster attacks, while Kasane uses a handful of slower but longer-range daggers that she can throw from a safe distance. You also have party members that fight by your side, and you can take advantage of their abilities. I think this is one of the only games that I've played where the characters have a combat role and are actually useful. Basically, one of your teammates can give you pyrokinesis or electrokinesis attacks to help you defeat certain enemy types, hypervelocity to slow down time, or sclerokinesis to make yourself immune to damage. And this is only naming a few. The only negative I have with the combat are the camera angles. It can occasionally mess you up if you're not careful, and it can't always keep up with the action. It isn't a big enough problem to affect combat, but sometimes it's very frustrating when you're in the middle of a fight and you just can't concentrate. The bigger issue is that while the combat is enjoyable and diverse, the enemies that you fight are not. And because of the lack of enemy variety, I was always exhausted from Scarlet Nexus combat, and I had to regularly take short breaks. However, I believe most people will enjoy the combat if they're looking for a good time, and simply just want to punch brain-eating monsters in the face. At the very least, the visual designs of the enemies are fantastic. The others are a magnificent mix of beauty and monstrosity. They just make the game look stunning and unique, and I think that's a good thing. It's understandable to dismiss Scarlet Nexus as just another anime game for weebs, and I don't blame you, but believe me, that would be a huge mistake. While the story does drag its feet a little bit, and some of the characters appear like typical anime archetypes, it's an entertaining ride from start to finish. The game's gameplay is enjoyable, but it does suffer from a lack of enemy variety, which doesn't hold up well for a combined 20-hour campaign for a first playthrough, but the game's rich story and characters do, making for an unexpected and amazing experience. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed my review on Scarlet Nexus and why I think it's amazing. I'll see you next time, and take care.